The human mind was not designed to fragment. It was designed to focus, to pour energy into creation until something greater emerged from effort. But the modern world turned attention into a currency to be traded instead of a tool to be mastered. Every scroll across a glowing screen, every meaningless refresh, every fleeting dopamine hit silently chips away at the architecture of potential. The erosion doesn't come with warning, it hides behind comfort. One moment of distraction becomes 10 become hours. Soon the day feels shorter, progress feels slower, and the mind feels heavier. Greatness doesn't vanish in explosions, it evaporates in notifications. What was once ambition becomes a feed of noise. What was once discipline becomes reaction. The slow corrosion of focus has built a generation addicted to absence, where presence is the rarest currency of all. Every minute spent avoiding purpose strengthens the walls around mediocrity. Distraction is subtle sabotage. It disguises itself as harmless entertainment but steals the sharpness of thought that could have built empires. Every wasted hour compounds into identity. The mind begins to mirror the randomness it consumes. The rhythm of life becomes fragmented, conversations lose depth, goals lose clarity, and attention becomes an open wound bleeding energy into emptiness. The tragedy is not in the loss of time, it's in the loss of direction. Each second stolen by distraction moves the self further from alignment. Greatness fades not because the dream dies, but because it's slowly replaced by noise pretending to be fulfillment. In silence lies construction, but silence has become unbearable. The modern mind fears stillness because it exposes truth. Distraction is not about pleasure, it's about escape. Escape from responsibility, from reflection, from the weight of potential unfulfilled. The mind sedated by stimulation forgets what real focus feels like. Purpose becomes foreign, like a language no longer spoken. Yet the architecture of potential never disappears, it waits underneath the rubble. All it needs is rebuilding, brick by brick, moment by moment, attention reclaimed from the trivial. Every time awareness returns to the present, a piece of the structure reforms. Distraction is clever. It sells comfort in the name of connection. It convinces the world that productivity equals progress, that visibility equals value, that scrolling equals learning. But the mind that chases stimulation never holds still long enough to create. It becomes a collector of fragments instead of a builder of foundations. The architecture of potential requires depth, not width. Great work is born from stillness, not speed. The more fragmented attention becomes, the more hollow progress feels. The person drowning in information begins to lose instinct. Knowledge without reflection breeds confusion, not wisdom. Every scroll away from silence is a vote for distraction over development. Every masterpiece in history began in solitude. Artists, thinkers, warriors, all learned to sit in the tension between chaos and clarity until something extraordinary was born. Distraction kills the tension. It removes friction, which removes growth. Without discomfort, creativity suffocates. The architecture of potential relies on sustained attention, not scattered energy. Each time the mind wanders aimlessly, another crack forms in the foundation. It doesn't collapse at once, but piece by piece until purpose becomes a distant memory. The mind becomes occupied but never fulfilled. That is the silent tragedy of distraction. It keeps life busy while killing depth. The modern environment thrives on dependency. Every device, every platform, every algorithm is designed to feed on attention. The more fragmented the mind becomes, the easier it is to control. The architecture of potential crumbles because construction requires discipline, and distraction dismantles discipline molecule by molecule. To rebuild it requires rebellion. Rebellion against consumption disguised as connection. Rebellion against the myth that constant stimulation means living fully. Real life begins when attention returns to intention, when silence becomes sacred again, when focus stops being rare and starts being ritual. Distraction is not just mental, it's spiritual. Every moment spent avoiding purpose is an act of self-betrayal. Potential doesn't die, it suffocates under the weight of repetition. The same day lived over and over again becomes a coffin made of comfort. The mind that once envisioned greatness now calculates convenience. Every untaken risk becomes regret waiting to age. The architecture of potential was meant to expand, not shrink. When attention returns to truth, the structure reawakens. The mind remembers what it's capable of. The soul begins to rebuild the empire distraction tried to erase. The body reacts to distraction like a toxin. Energy drains faster, clarity fades, time blurs. The nervous system burns out, chasing stimulation that never satisfies. Every scroll through meaningless noise steals vitality from focus. The body forgets rhythm, the mind forgets patience. But the recovery begins the moment stillness is chosen. The nervous system heals when attention returns to creation. The architecture strengthens when energy returns to direction. What once felt like exhaustion turns into drive, because the body was never meant for constant consumption. It was designed to execute vision. In reclaiming attention, purpose becomes visible again. Every moment once spent escaping becomes fuel for action. Clarity emerges not from adding more, but from removing excess. The architecture of potential thrives in simplicity. 1 hour of deep focus outweighs 10 of distracted effort. The man or woman who learns to concentrate becomes unstoppable, because presence multiplies power. The architecture no longer erodes, it expands. The foundation grows deeper, the vision grows wider, and life starts moving in harmony with intention. There was once a man who had everything: potential, energy, ideas, but he couldn't hear his own thoughts. Every second was filled with noise, notifications, opinions, endless motion that looked like progress but felt like decay. His days blurred into a loop of reaction. He mistook business for growth, noise for purpose, validation for value. Then one morning he looked in the mirror and saw exhaustion where ambition used to live. That's when it hit him. The world had mastered distraction, and he had become its servant. To rise again, he had to reclaim silence. Greatness was never born in chaos. It was always found in clarity. The first step toward power is separation. Detachment is not withdrawal, it is alignment. When the man began cutting ties with distractions, he felt withdrawal like an addict. Every ping, every scroll, every meaningless conversation had been a drug. Detaching from it wasn't easy. It felt like stepping away from oxygen. Yet as the days passed, the silence that once felt suffocating began to sharpen him. His thoughts grew heavier. His awareness deepened. What once drained him now seemed childish. The mind doesn't expand through consumption. It expands through creation, and creation requires space. He soon realized that distractions were never random. They were designed. Entire systems were built to keep his focus fractured, to ensure he was productive for others but never fulfilled within himself. The realization was painful because it revealed complicity. The enemy wasn't technology, it was lack of discipline. He had surrendered his attention to everything external while neglecting the empire within. To reclaim focus, he had to treat attention like currency. Every wasted minute was a withdrawal from the account of potential. Focus wasn't something to be found, it was something to be protected like territory. Isolation became his new mentor. At first, it felt brutal. The silence was so thick that it echoed, but over time, that silence began to speak. It whispered direction, creativity, vision. It showed what distraction had hidden: the next version of himself. The stillness became sacred. It was where he rebuilt discipline, where he learned that solitude was not loneliness, it was sovereignty. The more disconnected he became from noise, the more connected he felt to purpose. He discovered that clarity was not the absence of thought, it was the organization of it. Every temptation to return to distraction was a test. The world wanted him back, scrolling, reacting, consuming. The pull was psychological warfare disguised as entertainment. But he had tasted power, and once that happens, mediocrity becomes unbearable. He began structuring his environment to protect his focus. No wasted conversations, no meaningless scrolling. Every hour was filtered through intention. This wasn't obsession, it was liberation. The absence of distraction didn't make life dull, it made it vivid. Colors felt brighter, time felt longer, ideas came faster. Life hadn't been boring. It had been buried under noise. The more he detached, the clearer he saw the patterns around him. People chasing validation instead of progress, arguments over nothing, opinions built from headlines, entire lives consumed by comparison. He had once been part of that parade of distraction, but now he watched from a distance. He understood that society's greatest addiction wasn't pleasure, it was avoidance. Avoidance of self, of silence, of purpose. Distraction was the escape hatch from accountability. Those who closed it became unstoppable because they could finally confront what everyone else ran from, their own potential. He started replacing distraction with intention. The moments that used to be wasted became filled with learning, movement, reflection. Every hour had purpose, but it wasn't rigid. It was real. There was freedom in focus. While others scattered their attention across hundreds of meaningless tasks, he poured all his energy into mastery. That's when growth accelerated. His output doubled, not because he worked more, but because he worked clean. There were no wasted moves, no emotional detours. Focus turned life into strategy. Distraction was chaos. Discipline was clarity. As his focus deepened, his energy transformed. The same effort that once produced frustration now produced fulfillment. He understood that distraction doesn't just waste time, it destroys confidence. Each unfinished task and each hour wasted builds invisible guilt, and guilt breeds hesitation. By eliminating distractions, he stopped betraying himself. Every promise kept, every focused day completed, rebuilt trust between intention and execution. Self-trust became momentum, and momentum became power. It wasn't about control, it was about connection to purpose. The man who once drifted now directed. Soon, solitude became his superpower. While others sought stimulation, he sought silence. The world began to bend differently. People started to notice something in him. An energy that couldn't be explained, only felt. That was the power of undiluted focus. In silence, he became magnetic. He no longer chased outcomes. They gravitated toward him. His presence carried weight because it was no longer scattered. Distraction disperses energy, discipline concentrates it. When attention condenses, creation begins. The man had become a conductor of his own reality.